Dude, I restarted the Monsterverse last week, so I'm through Godzilla and Kong Skull Island. So now I got King of the Monsters and then Godzilla versus Kong, and then I'll be caught up and ready for Godzilla Kong IMAX, baby. The good stuff. Real fucking cinema, baby. Real fucking cinema.
It all goes back to Jurassic Park. I mean, that set a tone from Creature from the Black Lagoon garbage monsters to like, oh, this shit could actually exist.
Yeah,
but you're way more in that world than I am.
Yeah, it's I'm excited for it. And like I told everybody, like I went to see Dune 2 with some people and I was like, once I see the trailer for Kong Godzilla and IMAX, I'm gonna leave. Like that's the only reason I'm coming is to see that.
Yeah, right. So, well, you got 20 minutes of previews before that thing
oh
ever
my
gets
god,
going, right?
it's fucking crazy, dude. What is going on with movies now? Like
it's been that.
Normal ads, not even like movie commercials, like normal ads and then movie trailers and then the fucking movie.
Yeah, I just wish that, these theaters would put a start time for the previews and then a start time for the film, because my ass is always rushing to get in there, and then I get in there and I have to sit through 10 more minutes of trailers, and I always look around every time a new trailer comes up just to get people's reactions of like, oh gosh, here we go.
Yeah,
here's
another one. Yeah,
exactly.
But I gotta say, the Civil War trailer was fucking great. I'm so ready for that shit, dude.
I'm hesitant. Like you look up. Do you look up things before you go see a movie, or you rather go in just blind?
Most of the time I do.
Yeah.
Like with Dune, it was hard, in particular Dune 2, because I'd seen so much shit on the internet because like everybody had seen it before me. So, but like, yeah, most of the time, like I watch trailers. Like I know friends of mine that don't watch them because they think it ruins too much, but
some directors are creative, we'll talk more into it later, but I like the idea of fake outs. Like some directors will do fake outs of like shit that you're not going to see in the film ever in a trailer.
Yeah.
So that I find that interesting, but still I'm one of those. I avoid it if I can.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's Totally Biased Music. It's Blake and Anthony. We are here. We're recording on a Wednesday. We had some scheduling conflicts, so Christian's not here, but rest assured,
he keeps getting face tattoos. He's gonna be straight Post Malone next time he comes in. So
yeah, he actually is at a tattoo appointment right now. So we'll have to see how that ends up.
See what the reveal is.
But this week we're reviewing Exodus by Bob Marley and the Wailers. So Anthony, you picked Exodus. Why did you pick it? Tell us about it.
Well, we've hit on a lot of legends, or we've all hit on a lot of legends, throughout the history of the podcast. Kurt Cobain, Chris Cornell. Haven't done the Beatles yet, but Bob seemed too appropriate. And the film that recently came out, which is going to get overshadowed hugely by Dune, but the Bob Marley film, it was something that I was really looking forward to, and then to kind of have seen the film. And the film is kind of a genesis of the making of Exodus, and there's a real pivotal point in time. And this album, I think it resonates, on a world standpoint, or on a such a broader scale than just simply in Jamaica, which is where it really was a necessary time for something like this to happen, because there was such a political divide in Jamaica that was just ending in corruption and violence. And for someone like Bob, and just really the collective around him, to kind of come together, put something like this out there in the world, and then to go and tour it, I think that it's a real special and necessary album. So Bob, just being the figure that he is, I felt it was time to bring him to the podcast, and then also with that movie coming out at the same time, it made sense, I feel, topically.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was it's funny, when I was younger, like I was a huge Bob Marley fan, and I listened to him constantly, like probably when I was 13, 14, 15, like I listened to him on a regular basis, and then got into other types of music and things of that nature, and kind of moved away from it. But I still love reggae music. I still love Bob Marley and the Wailers, Bob Marley by himself. Like any of that music is enjoyable. It's funny, like I hang out with a friend of mine who he's from Africa, and he like we talk hip hop music and shit like that. And I was telling him one day, I was like, yeah, I used to listen, like we were talking about One Love, and I was like, I need to go see that, man. Like I used to listen to so much Bob Marley, and he was like, you're like the whitest person I know that listens like exclusively black music. He's like, you listen to so much black music. And I was like, I don't like, especially when it comes to Bob Marley, like I don't consider it. I know it is black music in the sense that it's part of black culture and black history, but I don't like see it that way. It's always just been music I enjoyed. So I never really had put that connotation to it, but it was funny to hear him say that, because he was like, this is, it's interesting to hear where your music taste has come from. But it is cool. Like, you know, Bob Marley, I need to see the movie because I need to learn more about kind of Jamaican politics at the time and things of that nature. But I think this album in particular, and just his music as a whole, is very uplifting. Like there is a light at the end of the tunnel music, whether it be life, politics, whatever it is. And I think that's a timeless message, which has allowed him to transcend generations and still be somebody that people listen to and enjoy on a regular basis. You know, that's super special to me.
Yeah, and like there's so the message is so clear, right? Or that I mean, this album is actually full of a few different messages because of the things that were happening in the time, and then the hope to kind of move forward in a unifying kind of way. There is a there's a moment there's a moment in the film, but obviously Bob lived this, where there was an assassination attempt during the making of this album to him in Jamaica, and it was kind of this seemingly pivotal point to say, all right, something's got to happen, but how do we make it happen in a way where we're not increasing that divide between parties? So they were going to like do a show in Jamaica, but then this assassination attempt happened, and that there's like a physical exodus that happens where during the recording of this album they take it to London, I believe, to go and finish the recording over there. And so there's like an actual exodus that's happening, and then and then just I think to know that something like that happened to an individual, to pivot in a way that he did, because I mean, an assassination attempt can go in so many different directions, but like to pivot and say, no, violence is not the answer. Like we can come together. There's hope. Um, don't worry, be happy. There's so many different ways to frame it, but to do it that way, I think gravitated, or a lot of people resonated with it. And again, to take a movement like Rastafarian culture and bring it to the world in this type of way. I mean, everyone can resonate with this music, and I mean, Bob, it's funny that you mentioned it being like black music, because Bob is mixed. His dad was white and he never even knew his dad. Or I think there's maybe a small bit of his childhood that he knew his dad, but in reality, he's like the perfect person, I think, for that role. And I think that resonated bigger because he only lived to be like 30 something, but
Yeah.
the impact that he made in such a short period of time is world renowned. So that's what I think makes this album so special and makes him so special. So that way it still resonates to this day.
Yeah, and he performed shortly after his assassination attempt, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so like the story is like they go to London, finish the album, then they start touring the album, and then there's a homecoming back in Jamaica where they do a free concert, and it's kind of the closing part of the movie. The movie's interesting because they only choose to frame a small point of his life, but then there's kind of flashbacks to his childhood and to where he met Rita. Um, so I think overall you can get a good grasp of Bob as a whole throughout the film, and they're speaking in real strong Jamaican accents too, which I really appreciate it. And the ending of the film is him on stage with the two political leaders, kind of holding hands, and everyone's hands are in the air, and it became a real pivotal moment. But something else that's interesting in the film too is that anytime, and I could see a lot of people getting turned off by this, but anytime the actor who's playing Bob Marley is singing or talking through a microphone, they overdub Bob's actual vocals. And that's
Oh,
anytime he's in
interesting.
it with a microphone.
Yeah.
But when he's singing in the car, it's the actor singing. So like
Yeah.
I could see that turning people off, but to hear his voice still resonating like that, it's really interesting, and I got a lot out of it.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into it, the Apple Music intro says Exodus opens with a warning, quote, many more will have to suffer, many more will have to die. Don't ask me why, things are not the way they used to be, end quote. You can see where Marley was coming from. In the few years leading up to the album's recording in early 1977, Jamaica had experienced a tremendous swell in political violence with gang and paramilitary groups affiliated with the country's two main parties, the Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party, killing each other in triple-digit numbers. Marley, who had already ascended to a kind of godlike neutrality, had stepped in to try to alleviate the mood with the Smile Jamaica concert shortly before the country's elections in December 1976, only to be shot during a home invasion 2 days before the show. He played anyway. So that kind of gives a little background to the album and the recording and the show, for sure. But let's get into it. What do you have for your top tracks for it?
So this album,
there's a lot of classics on here, man.
It's laced with just bangers, you know. I mean, like things where you may not even realize that. There was a time, and this was when I was kind of downloading music back in the day too, where as I was trying to discover Bob Marley's music, I was downloading stuff off of LimeWire, other outlets, and I remember being so skeptical of the tracks that I was getting because it would say, you know, like Natural Mystic Bob Marley, and I'd listen to it and I'd be like, is this really him? And then there would be like 30 songs and I'm like, no way, these were all Bob Marley tracks. And yeah, as you know, I started to become more savvy with research, I was realizing, dude, this dude is putting out all this epic music that I didn't even realize was him. But to try to break this down into 3 tracks, I'll give a top 3, but they're not in any order, but they're in order on the album. So it's the last 3 tracks of the album. I got Turn Your Lights Down Low is so fucking smooth, and it's such a break from the traditional dub or reggae feel of this album. It feels like Eric Clapton. It's very like melodic, and it's like sex in a song format, you know. It's very smooth, talking about good loving and all this. It resonates with me, and that starts the sequence. So Turn Your Lights Down Low, Three Little Birds is a song that has always been super special with me. I've named some dog training exercises off of Three Little Birds.
Nice.
Yeah, and the message is always so special. You know, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing's going to be all right. It's a lullaby, but it's a lullaby for people of all ages.
Yeah.
And then the last song, One Love, or One Love, People Get Ready. It's the message, you know, it's what it's all about. And I think that there's one way to leave people on this album. It's through that. But those 3 tracks closing it out is super special to me. But like I said, dude, jamming, Exodus, you know, so many things, so much things to say. This whole album is loaded. So, but if I had to pick, I'll pick those 3.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. For me, it's really hard. Like, there's a number of really good songs, and I will say Natural Mystic isn't on my top 3, but I have to give it a shout out and an honorable mention because like it's a great intro to the album, and even like they said in the Apple Music intro, like, you know, it sets the tone for this is an album, and we're going to talk about serious things that need to be talked about, but in a hopeful manner, right? Like, it's not a depressing, it's not an antagonistic or violent manner. It's just letting you know, like, these are thoughts on kind of what we're dealing with as a people, which I really, really enjoyed. So Exodus obviously is one of them. I like Exodus because it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's almost like an anthem for, like, it's basically saying like everybody, like, we're going to have to do this together, right? Like, it's a movement of, he says, all right, movement of the people. Like, it's a rally cry, right? For everybody to come together in like I said, a calm, pacifist way, but that's the message with Exodus. And like, it's just one of those Bob Marley tracks. When you think of Bob Marley, you think, at least I do, I think of Exodus, and I love that fucking song, and it's a timely message. The next one for me is Jammin'. This is just like, I don't know, I'm playing it right now, but I just love the jamming, and I hope you like jamming too. Like, it's such a vibe,
Join
man.
us, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just a nice, like, ride around, throw on some reggae. Like that's a song that I would pick. And like if people
Right.
aren't into reggae or haven't listened to reggae or Bob Marley, like I would play jamming. Like I think it's a
Yeah.
good song to kind of intro people into that genre. And then it's cliche as shit, but Three Little Birds, like
Right.
it's you have to. That's I want to see actually. I want to see if this is the most popular Bob Marley song. I think it's his. I think
Probably.
it's his most played song. At least Bob Marley and the Wailers. It's his most
Don't Worry,
played
Be
song.
Happy. Is that
And
is
then
that Bob Marley?
let's see if
I don't think it is actually. It's not.
Yeah, so Three Little Birds is his most popular song. So which makes a ton of sense. Like it's everybody knows that song, and if like even if you don't know who Bob Marley is, you're gonna know Three Little Birds.
Right.
You know what's funny is when I was listening to this, I was thinking about I Am Legend. I don't know if you when the last time you watched I Am Legend, but he's
only once.
Yeah,
only watched that once, dude.
Yeah,
I mean, there's too violent of a dog scene in that film.
Yeah, but he plays he talks about Bob Marley throughout that whole movie, and so it makes me think of this movie every time I listen to it. But I think it fits well. I think I think I Am Legend is based off a book. I wonder if they just kind of put the Bob Marley thing in themselves, or if it was like a theme in the book. Which I think the book came out way, way, way earlier, so I'm sure they just put it in for the movie. But I really enjoyed it. So yeah, those are my top three. A little cliche, but like that is what it is. They're all such great songs. There's a reason they're that popular,
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree. Sure. I agree. I mean, Exodus, I have written next to it just the mission. It's a mission statement,
Yeah.
And then jamming, like I said, it's an accompaniment. It's like, come on with it. You can't not vibe with this, right?
Yeah. Head bobbing music. All right, much harder. What are your bottom three tracks?
All right, so
do you have bottom threes? Or
I got some. I'll do it. I mean, I'll have them in here, but I always have caveats as to why.
Yeah.
So 3 bottom tracks, no particular order, and really just because of lack of notes. I'll put stars or I'll put dots next to songs that resonate with me or that mean something. And if it's something that I don't resonate with or I definitely don't like, I'll put X's. So I only have 2 X's, but I have 3 tracks that I'll put on here. The Heathen just felt too repetitive to me.
Yeah.
Reggae dub is a repetitive kind of thing, but vocals that are too repetitive to me, I get turned off. So the Heathen I have on there, Guiltiness I have on there, and Waiting in Vain. And I think it's really just because if I have to pick 3, I can't pick any of the other songs,
Yeah.
I mean, Natural Mystic, So Much to Say, Exodus, Jammin' in the last 3. So like out of 10 songs, I'll pick those 3, but it's just, pure circumstance.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think like it was really hard for me because like I genuinely enjoyed every song on the album. There are just things about certain songs that I didn't like as much. Like it made rating it really difficult because like there's not any songs that like when I listen to the album I'm thinking like, oh, this is a bad song or this doesn't need to be on here. I don't get that from any of the songs on here, but I had The Heathen as well for the same reason. I just wrote gets so repetitive. Like it's just so repetitive to the point where I'm like, all right, man, like I need something else. Like fucking mix it up in some way, shape, or form. But then you're not gonna like this, but I had Turn Your Lights Down Low. I like for honestly the same
song.
The same reasons that you like it. Like it's a departure from what I'm experiencing on the album, and like it's just really, really slow for me. Like it's kind of like you want to talk about a lullaby? It was kind of putting me to sleep a little bit. So that one was tough for me. And then So Much Things to Say. My main gripe with this song is like the overlapping vocals they do in this are there's so much going on to me in like a weird way where like I'm trying to pay attention to Bob and then like the Wailers in the background and they're kind of overlapping in a really weird, disjointed way to me. And like I just don't I think it's like the construction of that song. I don't like the way that it's pieced together. But I also like I love the lyrics and I love the instrumentals in it. It's just that one aspect of it that is kind of tough for me to overlook,
Yeah.
But like I said, the album as a whole is like none of those songs don't belong on there,
Right. And I think that too, like to that point of like the song is very busy. There are a lot of people in the studio trying to make this song. That's something that I think is an interesting visual aspect from this most recent film, was that like these are a bunch of young people trying to make music, but also trying to make music in Jamaica, where that's not a real big music industry there. So they really didn't know what the hell they were doing, and you can get that vibe from a lot of the early Bob Marley Wailer albums. But this one, I mean, you got Bob, you got the band, and you got like 3 or 4 vocalists too, including his wife. So there's a lot going on. But I think something that's worth mentioning too on this album, especially in Natural Mystic, is the guitar playing. Bob is a sick guitarist, and I think his vocals overshadow the other talents that he has.
Yeah.
But that's something that I think is worth mentioning too, is that he's a he's a wild showman. He's crazy on stage, but then also dude can shred too.
Yeah, I think, and like it's funny because not a lot of people bring that up when they talk about Bob Marley. Like they
Right.
talk about his vocals for sure and his lyricism, but nobody ever really talks about him as a guitar player. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Actually,
Yeah, musician and a prophet, for lack of a better term, for a lot of people over there.
Yeah, no, for sure. So did you know that this was their 9th album? Because I was unaware of that, dude.
I knew they had done a shitload, but like this one is being, so far down the list, had the biggest traction. But that was another thing that like I was very skeptical early on in my Bob Marley discovery. I'm like, no way they put out all these albums, prior to. I thought my LimeWire was just going to give me just straight viruses from all these early albums, because they just didn't feel like a real album. They felt very, rudimentary, for a lack of a better term. But
yeah,
digging back in, this is just where things started, but to see where it got to now, like this is a product, that withstands the test of time.
yeah.
As do some of his other albums, but there's definitely some cleaning up that was done over time.
Yeah. Well, it says on the wiki page, it says the album's production has been characterized as laid back with pulsating bass beats and emphasis on piano and trumpet and guitar. Unlike previous albums from the band, Exodus thematically moves away from cryptic storytelling. Instead, it revolves around themes of change, religious politics, and sexuality. The album is split into 2 halves. The first half revolves around religious politics, while the second half is focused on themes of making love and keeping faith. It says the album was a success both critically and commercially. It received gold certifications in the US, UK, and Canada, and was the album that propelled Marley into international stardom. So yeah, I think like when you look at it that way, like having it split down the middle, I think like jamming is kind of the last, is almost like the transition point of the album, right? Going from it's a political song, but it's also kind of like they talked about in the back half of keeping the peace and keeping faith, and then moving on to those bottom, waiting in vain, turn your lights down low, 3 little birds and one love is very much kind of on board with those after themes. So I thought that was interesting. And like it's crazy to see how successful it was, like it's only a 37-minute album, which I think is
it's
nuts.
Very short. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's an interesting point, because like, excuse me, when it comes to like listening to albums, I feel like we've talked in a lot of different ways of how to take in an album. So like this one with the time that we had between episodes was really interesting, because I got to experience it in a lot of different ways. I would sometimes I would just start the album and random points of it and let it keep going. And then there were times where I would chunk it out. And, spending time in this album, it's really interesting because it only creates an uplifting vibe. Like if you're aggravated with something, or you're short, or you're tired, or you're excited, or you're happy, or you're waking up, I think this is an album that you could play in so many different points of your day-to-day life, and it only is going to influence that time even better. To your point, if you're tired, turn your lights down low and you might take a nap.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
exactly.
So it's like it can resonate in so many different ways, and then you dig deeper into the actual like mission of this album. Was there's a huge picture behind it. But either way, no matter how it fits into your life, it can influence it, I think, in an uplifting and positive direction.
Yeah, for sure. So Rolling Stone, so on the top 500 greatest albums of all time, they have this at number 71, which is pretty fucking high up there.
Yeah.
And they say it's a reggae album, but it's a record with an agenda. Opening with Natural Mystic, a call to arms. So much things to say. Talks about martyrs, and it covers faith. Most of the first half follows similar themes, driving bass lines and songs with a sense of urgency. Side one ends with the title track and one of Bob Marley's greatest lyrics, "Are you satisfied with the life you're living?" The music is up-tempo but far from happy. The record really comes alive on side two, though. It's a hit factory, a mini greatest hits collection. Jamming into Waiting in Vain, later a hit for Annie Lennox, into Turn Your Lights Down Low, a hit for his future daughter-in-law, Lauryn Hill. Years later, into Three Birds, another song featuring some of Marley's best words, "Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing is going to be all right." Finally, Exodus ends with an anthemic One Love, one of the greatest anti-hate songs ever. Last time I said the following, quote, "I'm not huge into reggae, but this album surpasses genres. It's amazing." I stand by that. Although 7 years on and I appreciate reggae way more than I used to, Exodus was genre defining and made Bob Marley an international superstar. So yeah, high praise. They originally, I guess, so when Rolling Stone originally did a top 500 albums, they put it at 169. So it jumped a substantial amount, almost 100 spots from then to when they redid it. Where do
Yeah.
you think that's a fair rating? I know it's hard; you'd have to see the whole list, but
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's up there. I mean, I think that the cultural impact of this album and the message that still resonates today, I would probably put it even more up there. So I definitely think it's fair coming from Rolling Stone. I had no idea that Lauryn Hill was Bob Marley's daughter-in-law. I just had to like dig into that for a moment. I was like, wow, this is 2 degrees of separation from Bob Marley. It's
yeah,
it's pretty powerful stuff because she had a big impact on music too. But no, I'm comfortable with that. Considering just how they usually operate, it's going to be big commercial albums up top. But I dig
yeah.
it. I
For
dig it.
sure. Hell yeah. All right, well, what about ratings for you? So Pitchfork
So
has it as
yeah,
8.4, by the way. So
interesting.
pretty high for them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what do you think?
So my rating is a little bit higher than that. I'm going to give it a solid 9. There's the only track that I would say I could do without or that could be replaced is the Heathen for me. So like out of 10 tracks, if I could only toss out one, it would be that. So give it a solid 9. Playability is like crazy. Like I said, I just experienced it recently. It's just like this album can follow you throughout your journeys, and I think it will make sense in one way or another. So it
Yeah,
gets a
no,
solid
for
9
sure.
from me.
That's very fair.
What do
Like
you
I
got?
said, the rating was complicated for me because like I said, there
Yeah,
wasn't any songs in here that like I really disliked or didn't feel should be on there. I thought as a whole it was a really well put together album, but I didn't want to rate it too low and I didn't want to rate it too high. So I landed on an 8.5 because I mean 10 tracks, 37 minutes, it's short. It starts and ends really quickly, but that can also play to its benefit at the same time. It doesn't. I feel like with reggae in particular, if you listen to it for too long, it can start to drone on a little bit. But this is a classic album, man. A lot of classic bangers on here, and fucking rest in peace to Bob Marley. Like I
yeah,
really wonder, how his career would have flourished even further because he died 4 years after this, so it's like
yeah,
it could have been so much more music for him to make. But I really really enjoyed it as a whole, and it was nice to go back. Like I went through a reggae phase like probably 2 months ago, like started a reggae playlist and was listening to a shit ton of reggae. I don't really know what like inspired it, but it was nice to kind of dive into like a classic reggae album.
yeah. No, and I think you're right on. Like a lot of reggae albums or just collective of songs that can get repetitive or can feel like it's the same thing over and over. But there's a lot of diversity in this. And
Yeah,
and full disclosure, I had 8.5 and then I wrote a 9 over it at some point, throughout just the time of listening to the album.
yeah,
So we were almost right on.
yeah.
But
No, that's fair.
but yeah, this one I think it definitely withstands the test of time. So what are we talking? 77,
Yeah,
76,
1977.
30, 40 years, right?
Yeah,
So I mean that's saying a lot, and for minimal equipment, minimal commercial output, I mean they did a world tour, I think, of this album, and it never made it to the US, I think because I don't want to misquote, but I think it was because of Bob Marley's issue, whatever he was having with his foot, he ended up getting cancer, and that's, what inevitably took him away. But it's like, man, the guy had an impact in such a short period of time. All these guys do. Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain,
Yeah.
Chris. I mean, these guys, they leave their mark one way or another, and I think that just speaks volumes for who they were,
Yeah.
not being influenced by the machine that is like the music industry,
Yeah. No,
right?
for sure. Nice. Well, that was Exodus, Bob Marley and the Wailers. Please feel free, check it out. With that being said, let's get into Rides or Dies. Anthony, intro your track for us.
All right, so my track, it's a song called St. Andrew's Fall by Blind Melon. Blind Melon, another lead singer who left us not long after some big time success. Now, this song is super, super special to me, and I wanted to put it in Rides or Die because I want to do a different Blind Melon album, in the future. But this song in particular it's a song of two halves, and the first part is this very buildy like aspect, and then there's a moment halfway through the song where um, there's this almost climactic thing that's happening. It's kind of this crescendo or decrescendo, in fact. Have you looked up anything about this song? Do you know anything about this song?
No.
Okay,
No.
good. So it gets crazy because there's a big backstory to this song. Um, St. Andrew's Hall is a place in Michigan. I think it's in Detroit, and it's a concert venue. And apparently, one night while standing outside of the concert venue, Shannon Hoon, the lead singer of Blind Melon, and I think either some bandmates or some other people, they're standing outside, and they see a girl standing on the roof, and she jumps off and she kills herself. So like, there's this moment in the song. If you re-listen to it, you will hear what might have been kind of a soundtrack of what it's like to see someone, falling 20 stories or whatever it was. And then when that moment happens, um, it goes into this real melodic kind of duet with himself that Shannon Hoon does, because you'll hear, and I still don't know the lyrics because there's two verses being sung simultaneously by Shannon Hoon, and they're both equally beautiful, and they're both so different. So like, you can listen to this track twice and hear two separate endings almost. It's really beautiful. I think the harmony that he shows with his own voice is special, but like, the impact of the song and the story behind it, it always has given me chills. So I wanted to bring it to the podcast, just because I think it deserves its light, and I think that story is worth telling. If other people hadn't heard it either, I think it's worth digging into. So
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that. That's kind of fucking crazy,
right,
actually. That
yeah,
story is insane, dude. I
yeah,
wonder what that fucking that's like traumatizing for them to witness, dude.
yeah, and to put it in song format too is like, whoa.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, I think that like hearing that shine some light on it. I'm still giving it a dice.
Okay, I
But
was
listen,
wondering.
it's because of like the crescendo that you're talking about, like when the song like 2 minutes in gets really fucking chaotic, and I
Right,
now like knowing the
now
story, I
it
know
makes
why
sense.
they did it, because it's like that's
Mm,
probably that's her falling, right? Like that's the
yeah.
moment of her falling, but like holy fuck, man. Like it was driving me insane, and it goes on like for a it feels like, hang on, let's see how long it actually goes
It's
on.
like 20 stories below, and
Yeah,
it's like,
it
whoa.
goes on for like basically 20 seconds,
Yeah.
but it feels so much longer because it's just
All right.
chaos,
Now,
dude.
yeah. Now picture you watching somebody falling, right? That probably takes 10 seconds. I don't know. Good time. You saw somebody fall in good time. That didn't take long, but it
True.
felt like how long, right?
Yeah,
But that's
true.
the thing. It's like when you take an event like that, a traumatic event, and put it in a digestible format for people, I think you're going to make them feel one way or another. But yeah, I didn't expect it to influence your rating, but like, definitely makes you think a lot.
Yeah.
Like, what could that have been like?
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Very interesting
Good.
though. I do need to. I would listen to a Blind Melon album. You know, Blind Melon is very, very popular, very talked about. I need to listen to more Blind Melon, so we'll have to do an album at some point.
We'll do it.
All right, so I chose First Person Shooter by Drake featuring J. Cole. And the reason I picked this track, so there's a little bit of history with this too. So J. Cole has been rapping for a long, long time. Let's see when his first album came out. You know, he had mixtapes before his albums. So very first album, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it in time. I'm scrolling through Spotify.
I feel like I can picture
2011. 2011. Yeah. So this track, the reason I picked it is because this is J. Cole's first and only track to get to a #1 Billboard spot. So that was a big deal when it happened, because granted it is a collab song with Drake and it's technically Drake's song, but it's the first time that Cole has been in a #1 spot, which I thought was really, really interesting, because J. Cole is one of my favorite rappers, one of my favorite artists ever, man. Like, I love him. I've seen him a number of times. I'm always impressed. Like, I don't have a single J. Cole album that I listen to and I'm like, this is a bad album. And 2014 Forest Hills Drives is like one of the most famous hip hop albums of the past 10 years. Right. And like, it was really, really interesting to me that this was the first track to get him to a #1 spot. And it sucks. Like, part of it drives me crazy because he deserves more credit. And I think like he's owed more #1 spots. And like, it also drives me crazy because that's like the Drake effect, you know? Like, I'm not a Drake fan, and like it's annoying to me that he is basically riding on Drake's coattails to get there. But with that being said, like, he fucking dominates this song. Like, his verse in this song is so good and he just pops the fuck off. And like, my favorite part is when he has a break and then he comes back in and he's like, when I show up, it's motion picture blockbuster, the goat with the golden pen, a top toucher, a spot rusher. Like, the way he just fucking spits that, like, it's so nice. And he outperforms Drake hard as shit. And every time I listen to this song, once the J. Cole verse ends, I go to the next song. I'm like, all right, that's all I came here for.
Just stop it. Yeah.
The beat changes and then Drake goes and like finishes out the song. And like, I seriously don't even know if I could like name a lyric off the back half because I change it as soon as J. Cole's over. So it was really to highlight Cole. That's the reason I picked it. That's what I figured, yeah. So what did you think?
Well, I think a lot of things, right? I mean, like when you send me a Drake song, I immediately go, here we go. Because I'm not a huge Drake fan, but I also understand this Drake effect too, because I mean, that's how he got to where he was, right? But yeah, Drake hasn't, and this might trigger a lot of people, but he hasn't done enough in my mind to have that influence, right? On music culture, but he does for whatever reason. But I also do something similar to what you do, is that I change the song as soon as I hear dogs barking in the background. It's super, super triggering for me that like it didn't freak me out like that Tool song did. Yeah. But like Tempest. But it just seemed so unnecessary. Like it didn't influence the song in any way. So like, you know how they have like amended versions of tracks? If I could get a version of this song without dogs barking, I will give it a fair listen. But until then, if this is what you're going to put out, and that's crazy that this song debuted at #1 on the charts. I don't even understand. That just takes my perception of whoever's doing these ratings and tosses it away. But if there's a barkless version of this track out there, find it and send it to me. But otherwise, the shit dies. It dies for me. I respect the J. Cole. How do we say that? I respect the idea of J. Cole finally getting his due, right? Yeah. But nope. All right. No dogs barking.
That's fair. And you know, it is funny. Like, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. Like, it is crazy because Drake and Taylor Swift, like, for better or worse, are the biggest artists we have seen probably of our lifetime. Like, honestly, they are just a behemoth of record sales, fucking ratings, tour numbers. Like, it's insane. And, you know, Drake, I think, Drake's first 4 albums, I think, are really good hip hop albums. I don't think he's put out a great hip hop album in years. I think it's 2016 is probably the last time I would say that. So, but he's just like, he's this generation's Lil Wayne, you know, and he came in a time where streaming was taking off and everything was exploding. And so he came at the right moment and the right time that gave him that status that he has, whether it's earned or not. Obviously, you're going to talk to people our age that are going to say it is. You're going to talk to people like us who say it's not. I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? Like, he's around for the long haul. It's not like he's going anywhere. I think he should maybe stop making music. I think it's time. Like, he went from putting out like 8s and 9s to like 5s. So it's like, you know, but whatever. Got to keep the machine churning, I guess.
I mean, that's the thing. They're both enigmas. Like, Taylor Swift and Drake are both enigmas that the industry just latched onto and just says, all right, we're going to keep going. The wheels are not going to fall off because the finances and the machines behind them. But like, yeah, I would agree. Like, you can
hang it up,
get behind the decks, you know, just produce some shit, right? Or just say produced by Drake, right?
Yeah,
that'd be fine. That would still boost people, but yeah, the quality goes way down.
It's gone down. Yeah. All right, well, that was Rise or Dies. Give the tracks a listen. So finally, on to the most important part of this episode. Dune motherfucking 2, dude. Yeah. So when did you see it? Did you see it in IMAX? What were your initial thoughts?
Okay, so it might have been the last podcast or maybe podcast before I told you that I have a tendency to like wait when things are out. So this is some shit I did 3 years ago, actually, when Dune Part 1 came out. I didn't see Dune Part 1 till 2 weeks ago. And that was it was a very strategic move for me because like I wanted this whole story as a whole. And if I would have known that there's going to be more Dunes likely coming out, I may have even waited to see this one. But
Jesus,
what a fucking experience it was for me, because yeah, I saw Dune 1 here, massive sound system, big screen. And that was fucking sick. And then I was very stoked to see Dune 2. And I did see it in IMAX, and man, the theater was fucking rumbling.
Yeah.
You know, it was something so special. And like, I went back to see it randomly the other day in a non-IMAX theater, and it was such a whole different vibe. And it's like, IMAX is the way to go, or massive sound system on a giant screen at your house.
Yeah.
As long as you have sound and as long as you have visuals, like, this is what it's meant. This is how it's meant to be taken in. And yeah, goddamn, what a powerful experience. You know, I'm just gonna call him Denny V. V, homie throws it down.
Pop the fuck off. The fuck off. And
he
like,
knows what he's doing.
Everybody just, I mean, IMAX, like, look, I've heard some people complain about this new wave of every movie being filmed for IMAX, and people saying like that's not necessary, and like, why are we doing this? Why are we advertising it like this? Like, my opinion, film fucking everything for IMAX. I don't give a shit if it's Minions 4, bro. Make it IMAX. Like, that is the way to experience a movie. I don't care I mean, Oppenheimer is mostly just and it's mostly just dialogue. I still want it in IMAX. Like, that's just the way to. So seeing Dune 2, man, just the fucking body experience, the rumbling, the noise, the war scenes, like the war scenes, like the big war scene at the end and the fight at the end. There's no music, right? No Hans Zimmer. It's just straight fucking the sounds of war, and like that sound in IMAX is insane to me. And the visuals. There's some beautiful shots in this movie, man. Like, and by the way, heavy spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, turn this off. But like the scene where he goes to ride the worm, right? And he picks the spot in the sand, and they zoom out, and it's just his small figure, like with on the sand dunes, or the scene at the end where they launch the nukes and he's standing as it explodes, like in the background. Like, some of those wide angle shots with just the size of what's going on is so fucking nice and so cool. Like, there's so much about this movie. Like, you know, when going into it, somebody had said like, it's the perfect love story, it's the perfect coming of age story, it's the perfect war story. And like, they were right, man. This is one of the only movies I've seen be hyped so much that lived up to those expectations. You know, there wasn't a single thing that I could have seen them do differently, you know, and that's special to me.
I mean, it's interesting, you know, the creative liberties too, right? Like, the gladiator scene is all monochrome. You know,
Yeah.
it's there's no color in that, right? And like
Yeah.
the scale of shots, like you're talking the sheer massive shots of the Imperial Army, right? Or the
Yeah.
Harkonnen army, and it's like that's massive. And then there's such an intimate shot with Chani and Paul, they're laying together, right? And it's like
Yeah.
super close up and super soft and intimate. And like so many I told Christian when I watched the first one before I saw the second one, I said, dude, I bet Denny V was just foaming at the mouth with the opportunity to tell this story
Yeah.
in a way that like people have tried before and been able to do it or not been able to do it. And I want to talk on that in a little bit, but like to take something as simple as cymactics, like taking sound in a visual format, like the medium of sand is so beautiful to see when it's movement, right?
Yeah.
The tension that's being built with the sand, with the worm calling, that little
Yeah.
thing that's
Yeah.
hitting the ground. It's so funny. That scene you're talking about where he's calling the worm to ride it, like the first couple times he hits the ground and it doesn't make any sound, but then Chani thinks like go lower, and he goes lower and he hits the ground and it just
And it thumps.
it
Yeah.
pulses.
Yeah.
Like that is such a tension building tool that is just done to perfection, because when you start hearing those thumps, everyone knows what's about to happen, or they know some
Yeah.
shit is about to happen. And like when it does, man, it's just
Yeah.
powerful. There's really no other way to put it.
Yeah. And it's such like, man, the story, and I'm like 120 pages into the book right now. I
Oh,
left the
beautiful.
theater and went and bought the book. I went to Barnes and Noble from the theater. I was like, this shit is so good. I have to read the book fucking now, dude.
Right.
So like but the story, like, and I don't know if you knew this, but Denis said that him and his friend, when they were children, wrote like their version of what a Dune movie would be like. Did you hear that?
No.
He said when he was a child that him and one of his friends basically wrote a screenplay when they were like 15 about how they wanted. So this has been like a lifelong dream of his to make this movie. And it's like, it's crazy to see it be so successful. But the story is just, it's such a cool sci-fi story, and I love the parallels of just the Fremen. And I think that Frank wrote the book like with thoughts of Muslim culture within that, and like I think that a lot of it is based in that, and like the religious aspect to it and things of that nature. Like it's nice to see the religious parallels, and shows kind of how that affects people for better or worse. And it's just like everything about it is so interesting to me, and the story itself is exhilarating. And some of the Timothy Chalamet, like I think this is up to this point, like he's been a good actor, right? But this really solidifies his greatness. He plays Paul so fucking well, and to watch his degradation like slowly into space Hitler is really really interesting to see. And man, some of those movies, like that final battle or that final fight scene is like, it's gut wrenching, right? Like it's anxiety inducing. And when he's getting stabbed, you're like, oh fuck, like, and I didn't know, how it would end. And it was just like one of those movies that like it evokes a visceral reaction out of you. And it's, I don't know, man. I can't speak highly enough. I need to go see it again. And what's funny is like I went with somebody like I went with a girl who like historically, and I feel comfortable saying this because I've told her this, like historically likes really shitty movies and doesn't like good movies. And even she, like as soon as the movie ended, she looked at me and was like, we have to see it again. Like we weren't even out of the theater yet. It was like, we have to go again. And I was like, oh, 100%. Like it's just like, you can't, when you first watch it, there's so much going on that it's like you can't really comprehend everything. So I need a second watch to just kind of let it breathe,
Well, that was my experience too with the first one. I was like, what? Like I literally had no idea at all what Dune, anything about it, till 2 weeks ago. And like stepping into that world, I was like, oh my gosh, this is way bigger than I could have imagined it was going to be. Right. And to again see parallels, because instantly, I was like, okay, well, Star Wars and this are so alike. What came first? What is this? There's so much lore behind Dune influencing Star Wars, because back when in the 70s, there was a director. His name is Alejandro Jodorowsky. He's done some crazy fucking movies, and in the 70s, he tried to do this movie. And there's a whole documentary on it. I sent it to Christian. I'm gonna send it to you. It's just called Jodorowsky's Dune, and I'm gonna list out. This is what the movie could have been. Okay, you ready for this? So he was going to be the director. All right. The person who was going to play the emperor, Salvador Dali. He's a
Damn,
crazy
really?
artist. Yeah. And it was so insane because he wanted $100,000 per minute of screen time.
Jesus Christ.
So he was going to do 5 minutes of screen time, and there had this whole other ploy to have his character in the film. But that's a part of it. All right. Fade Rotha, the guy who has the duel with Paul at the end.
Yeah.
Mick Jagger was going to play this role. Dude, this is crazy. The Baron, going to be played by Orson Welles. All right. This was all in line to do. Crazy artists, H.R. Geiger, Dan O'Banion. These are like artists that ended up doing films like Alien and Star Wars and so many new things to come. Guess who was going to do the score of the film? This is the real nail in the heart. Is Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd was on board to do it.
No way.
I'm telling you, this was a thing that was going. I don't know. Technology might have been the only limiting factor, but this guy, Alejandro Jodorowsky, you mentioned Denny V having a storybook when he was a child, and this guy wrote out the entire film with an artist. So there's a book that, I mean, it's some 1,000 page. It's massive. It's like that big. And it's storyboards for how the entire film was going to be shot. And he went and brought it to all the studios, all the American studio companies to try to get it produced, and no one would touch it. I think because he was going to make, it was going to be like crazy long. Like, I think it was between 14 and 20 hours of a product. Exactly. And the dude, the director, is a character. He's wild. And like, I think that it scared the shit out of these production companies to say, look, we get the idea, we see how it can be done, but like, I don't know if we can trust this guy.
Yeah.
But he had everything laid out. The documentary is incredible, and it's also wild to see some of the storyboards that were made in the 70s produce themselves into the film that we see now. You know, part 1 and 2. I mean, there are direct parallels to it. I haven't seen David Lynch's Dune yet, but I know that there's a lot of lore behind that one too, because when David Lynch finally took on the film, he didn't get the final cut of what was going to be put out there. So he was upset with that, and he called the movie a failure because of it wasn't what he intended. But now everything is worthwhile because we got this beauty of a product. You know, it's just so special. And to know that there's more is so, I mean, it's fucking exciting, right? I mean, like, how long is it going to take? Who takes over after Denny's done? You know, I think he said he's going to do Dune Messiah. Yeah. But, I mean, there's what, 6 books, I think? 6 Dune books?
Well, there's a total of like 20. So he does like a number of them, and then his son took over after he passed and wrote some more, and apparently they're not good. But like, even his books, like, I think like there's 6 that essentially are correlated to Paul, and the rest of this, like, it goes Messiah and then Children of Dune, I think, is the next one. But I don't know a ton about it. A friend of mine told me that, or Jordan told me that Messiah is significantly shorter than, because I was like, how the fuck is he going to fit Messiah into one movie? Because he split the first book up into 2 movies, and Jordan was like, it's way shorter. Like, the first book is like 600 pages, and he said Messiah is like half that. So we'll see how it goes, and hopefully I'm done with Messiah by the time it comes out. I'm sure it will be. It's going to be years from now, but like, you know, this is Denis. Denis has a roster that you could stack up against anybody, but like, to me, this is like his magnum opus. This is a perfect film in my eyes. Fucking 10 out of 10, 5-star on Letterboxd, like, no complaints. And, you know, I saw there's this guy on Twitter that keeps posting how many times he's going. He's on his 12th round in IMAX. So shout out to that guy. Respect.
It's at least a day of his life spent in Dune Part 2. Right?
In Dune. So like, I don't know, man. I just got to say high fucking praise. And I knew it was going to be good. I didn't think it was going to be this fucking good. Like, I loved it. And I got to say, like, I don't know who shines more, Rebecca Ferguson or Timothy Chalamet or Zendaya. Like, and Zendaya, like, first off, I said this to y'all. Like, if I had to choose between being a dictator and Zendaya, I'm picking Zendaya 10 out of 10 times. Paul's fucking tripping. She's one of the baddest women on the planet. So, and like, her Dune look is...
Dude, she has an interesting role in all of this because I caught it from the first film, and then the second one, it hit it right on the head too. So the first film, her last line is it in the film. Do you remember what it is?
This is just the beginning.
Yep. Yeah. And then her last line from part 2. Did you catch which that one?
No.
What that line is. So she says, "This is far from over." Which is very interesting, you know? And like her role as this kind of guide aspect, or like maybe it's a relatable figure that humans in our time can latch onto, because she's kind of planting seeds to say this is where we're going, right?
Yeah.
And something I found really interesting too was when I first watched Dune Part 1, I wrote Paul down, and then I wrote next to it, I wrote anti-hero ? Because I was getting these vibes of like how do they want me to feel about this guy?
Yeah.
Because he's being portrayed as this messiah, or quote messiah, because there's so much skepticism throughout this entire time of like, is it true? Is the prophecy true? Is he really doing this? Is he getting lucky? Is he manipulating it? Are they trying to capitalize on this planet, right? Which, by the way, Spice is I still would like to know more about what it does, but I guess we're kind of catching glimpses of it.
Yeah.
But I found that really interesting to kind of get that perception, because I did see an interview with Denny, who mentions that directly. He said after reading the book, Frank Herbert was kind of taken aback, or I guess after he wrote the book, he was kind of taken aback because people started to perceive Paul as a hero. And he said that really wasn't the
his
initial intention.
Yeah.
Which I was like, wow, that, because he, you know, with not knowing anything, it was able to translate, at least to me, you know, that there may be a dark side here that we're not totally seeing yet.
Yeah, and
just catching glimpses.
I do have to say, I like that the water of life is very clearly just DMT, but Frank Herbert was like, I have to find a different way to say this. Like, that's exactly what that was. So I thought that was great. And I do have to say, like, I think it's great that both movies essentially end on Chani. Like, they end on Zendaya's character. Like, the very last shot in this movie is her, like, about to jump on a worm and GTFO, you know? And so I think, like, I believe she has a much bigger role in Messiah. Again, I don't know, but I think that's what he's kind of pinning this up for. And man, it's just like, I know it's nice that, like, you get a love story, like a beautiful love story, and it's really powerful, and then it just ends in like depression and chaos. Like, it sucks because you want them to be together, and like you can see the hurt on her face. She does it so well when he asks the Emperor's daughter like to take his hand, and she just looks like somebody punched her in the stomach, and like it's like heartbreaking to watch. You want to
be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, like what are you doing, bro? This is generational hotness right here. What are you're fumbling?
I mean, Florence Pugh, I mean, it's not a downgrade, you know, it's kind of like a pivot, but like, but still, no. You got to go. You got to go with your heart. But like that's the conflict. You know, it's like, okay, what are the true intentions here? What is the overall goal? Because, you know, like I said, it's still up in the air. It's still, who knows what's to happen. I mean, there are obviously people who do, but the idea being like there's definite conflict here that we need resolution with, and you don't get.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dune 2, man. If you haven't seen it, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Go see it. Denis needs 500 million to break even, apparently. I think we're on track to hit that, but everybody can do their part. Everybody can do their part. So, well, Anthony was good. Oh, album. So Christian picked the movie. He's not here. Yeah. He picked Old Country for Old Men. And boy, Anthony,
No Country for Old Men.
No Country for Old Men.
You know who's in that movie, right?
Yes.
So our boy who keeps popping out, he had some fucking comedic lines in.
Yes, he did.
Dune, when he was just like, "Lisan Agahib," you know, just like he just like ran anything Paul did. He's like, "Oh shit, he did it again. It's happening." Yeah, I'm excited to see that. To have him kind of in a different role too.
Yeah,
he does.
For sure.
He's crazy in that movie.
So you've said that the pod is to enlighten me on music, and so I think what we're gonna do here is it's time to enlighten you. So what we're gonna do, and I would like to bring a guest on for this one if we can make it work, because it's a big album. We're doing the one and only My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy from Kanye West, baby. Front to back, one of the most monumental hip hop albums ever. So big episode next week. Strap the fuck in. Anthony, I'm stoked to hear. Go into it with an open mind, put aside all current Kanye biases, and just get ready to fucking listen to a masterpiece, baby.
I can do it. Remind me, what's the documentary? There's a Kanye documentary on Netflix, right? Like a two-parter or something like that.
It's called Genius. It's a three-parter. So apparently part 1 and 2 are good, and part 3 is not, because they like run out of footage. But part 1 and 2 is like him becoming Kanye essentially, and then part 3. I watched the first part. It's fucking phenomenal.
I watched it. It was good. I just forgot what it was called. Yeah. It's a good thing. All right, so we'll. You just prepare yourself, right?
Yeah, let's
I'm
get it.
Biased as fuck, so we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Anthony, thanks for joining. We will be back next week. We'll see you all then.
Sounds good. See ya.
Peace.